Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Abdul Al Muttalib, Lords, Birds, and Elephants. There was a place in times of old called Makkah where a man named Abdul Muttalib found himself facing quite a few problems. The biggest problem, of course, was the invasion of his homeland by Abraha, the new Christian viceroy of Yemen, or so it seemed. Abraha had been appointed a viceroy by the king of Habsha, who had recently conquered Yemen. Eager to leave a lasting impression, Abraha took the opportunity to try and convert the idol worshipping Arabs into Christians. To this end, he built an imposing church named Al and invited the Arabian tribes to direct their yearly pilgrimages to the new church rather than the Kaaba which their ancestors Ibrahim had built. Unfortunately for Abraha, his church idea proved to be a great failure and was met with derision and disrespectful from all sides. Meanwhile, the Arabian tribes blithely continued their yearly pilgrimages to Mecca and the ancient Kaaba located there. In a moment of anger and frustration, Abraha decided to march to Mecca and destroy the Kaaba. He gathered his army, including several large African elephants, and marched north. Along the way, he fought and defeated several Arabian tribes who had sought to defend the Kaaba by trying to stop the northward march of the fearsome army. Eventually, Abraha and his men reached the outskirts of Mecca where they seized the herds of cattle belonging to the people of Mecca. In response, the people sent a delegation headed by Abdul Muttalib to meet with Abraha and negotiate for the safety of the Kaaba and the return of their cattle. Abraha looked upon Abdul Muttalib, a regal and handsome man, with favor and treated him with respect. He sat Abdul Muttalib in state beside him and told his interpreter to ask Abdul Muttalib to name whatever he wanted and he would try to oblige him. Tell him, Abdul Muttalib said to the interpreter, that he has seized 200 of my camels. Abraha sat back in disapproval as he listened to the translation. Then he told the interpreter to tell him, I liked you when I saw you, but now that you have spoken to me, I no longer like you. You speak to me of 200 camels I seized, and stay silent concerning the house I have come to destroy, one that is sacred to both your people and your religion. Abdul Muttalib smiled benevolently at Abraha and said, I am the lord of those camels. The house has a lord who will protect it. Displeased with Abdul Muttalib's philosophical reply, Abraha retorted, he will not be able to protect it from me. As you say, Abdul Muttalib said eagerly. After further negotiation, Abraha returned the cattle he had seized and turned a deaf ear to any and all proposals that did not include him destroying the Kaaba. Despairing of talking Abraha out of attacking the Kaaba, the people of Makkah fled to the surrounding mountains and watched from the heights. They looked forward to the destruction they were sure would rain down to anyone ignorant enough to meddle with the house of God. Eager to put an end to the Kaaba, Abraha ordered that the great elephants be brought with him be driven straight at the Kaaba. At the behest of their handlers, the well-trained elephants thundered obediently towards the ancient building. When they drew near to the humble house of God, the mighty elephants completely confounded everyone by kneeling down and disdainingly refusing to move forward. The elephants' handlers desperately tried to force the great beast up, but no amount of whipping or shouting could drive the elephants towards the simple cube-shaped building before them. The people of Makkah stood on the surrounding mountain peaks and laughed at the antics of the invaders and their elephants. Whenever the elephants' handlers tried to move them in any direction except that of the Kaaba, they would rise and march quickly forward, but as soon as the elephants were urged toward the Kaaba, they knelt and balked. Abraham grew more and more incensed by the behavior of his elephants, and he vented his spleen on their handlers to no avail. The elephants simply would not move toward the Kaaba. In the midst of his rage, Abraham became painfully aware of the ridiculous spectacle that balking elephants and their frustrated handlers presented. His own men had started to mutter that the elephants' behavior meant that what they had to come to do was scurrilous act, not a righteous one. Perhaps, they said to one another, they should leave. Displeased by these mutterings, Abraham decided to forego the spectacle of the elephants tearing down the Kaaba. Instead, he simply ordered his men to march forward. The mighty army obediently began marching towards the Kaaba, but was startled when the sound of many flapping wings rose in the air. Looking up, the unnerved men beheld a huge swarm of birds airing straight for them. Each fierce-looking bird carried 3 pebbles, one in its beak and one in each talon. As they winged their way directly over the army, the men turned in confusion and horror as the birds started dropping their pebbles and the soldiers around them started screaming and falling. Abraham and the people of Makkah looked on in awe and shocked as each bird dropped its burden and soldiers fell, wounded or dead, struck down by the pebbles that seemed to burn into their bodies. The small remnant of the once great army turned and fled past their frightened leader, who did not escape unscratched. As he tried to retreat with his panicking men, Abraham felt one of the burning pebbles strike him. Despite frantic attempts to rid himself of the burning pebble, Abraham succumbed to his injury and died before he could reach Yemen again. Meanwhile, Abdul Muttalib and the people of Makkah stayed on their mountain tops and watched as the few survivors of Abraham's army staggered away. The birds who had defeated the soldiers simply fluttered away over the mountains and disappeared into the distance. When all was silence and peace again, the people of Makkah cleared the eerily silent field of battle and returned to their lives, deeply grateful that they had treated the ancient Kaaba with the reverence and respect its Lord clearly expected.